as well. Okay, officially Friday, June the 16th, and welcome everyone. And so as this is all unfolding, the part of what I wanted to share, there's actually two parts. So I'm just going to step away from the Hoffman process today. I've been guided to do that. So, but the two messages for today, one of them being around my own personal story about the Sacred Art of Business Academy. And so years ago, the idea of of how I could guide and mentor other coaches, other consultants, other business owners, and not just women, but it really is a calling, for me to work more so with women. I would never deny working with a man. As I pause and I say that, I'm like, okay, universe, I'm not sure if that's true, but okay. So, and um and it's been like a long birthing process, so even longer than 9 months. Yesterday, finally, I I got to be in pre-launch stage, so I can now go and find the first 5 contributors for the academy, and I'm super super excited, and I'm sharing this, A, because I'm celebrating with all of you, but B, because I for the longest time tried to push the agenda of what I wanted with the academy. So I did what I did as a marketing consultant. I looked at the project, hired the right people for the project, got a timeline for them, reversed engineered everything, and then had different markers throughout the project. But each time we would work on a portion of the project, something would happen. So we had some technology glitches. We had people getting sick. We had people going on vacation, and I found myself at different times really resisting, uh, being a little bit pissy. So then there's not even a kind word for that. And not upset at the people, but just like thinking, oh, for like fuck's sakes, like I've wanted this for so long. And when the idea of the academy came, I honestly, like in true transparency, thought that it would just like, of course, unfold. And I think we all think that, right? When we're meant to do something, it's going to unfold so beautifully, and the butterflies are going to be around, and the hummingbirds and rainbows and unicorns and marshmallows and all of that kind of thing. And then there was a few storms, and a few, trekking through mud and resistance, not only for myself, but what I witnessed was resistance from the designer and resistance from the website developer. And so I started to see, of course, that their resistance is my resistance. They're like, right, like they are a reflection and mirror for me. And so rather than being angry, uh, working through anger, because it wasn't like I wasn't angry, or it was more frustrated and disappointed actually than anger. I just allowed myself to feel the frustration. I and asked those open-ended questions like, what is the truth of this? And all I kept on hearing was, it's not time. That was your time frame. That's not the time frame. That was your timeline. It's not the timeline. And as I started to look at what my resistance was, I became aware that my resistance was, I had talked to so many people. I was so excited about it. And I have so many people that have said yes to being part of it. I was feeling like I had egg on my face. And so it was all egoic driven. And it wasn't like, people phoned in and up with disappointment. People knew that it was a project, and people understood that we were building it from the ground up, and that there was a whole back end that needed to be built. It wasn't like I could go out and just use Kajabi as an example, or another membership site, and although I tried that, so part of the delay last year was trying to find the right platform to host all of the phases that I had in my head in one place. I knew I could go, okay, do it here this way, do it this way, but I was being guided and led that no, it just needed to be in one place. So I started to see. So as I was celebrating yesterday, and thank you, Sherry. It's been a great week of celebration, right? Between the passing the bachelor's degree, the Sacred Art of Business Academy. We're in our first, like what I refer to as my there's a pre-launch stage. The Angel Empowerment Healing course next week. There's just been so many incredible things to celebrate. And as I started to observe my ego, my limiting beliefs, today I'm going to refer to it as my ego. I started to observe how my ego would rear her head. I was going to use the word ugly head, but that's actually not fair, because the ego is there for protection. There is a purpose for our ego. There, of course, like everything else, because everything is created as a whole, there is the challenge of the ego as well. And if we're willing to accept, and I'm going to use words that I think I've used at different times here, but if we all decided as a collective to move into what I refer to as Christ consciousness, and even if the word, Christ doesn't resonate with you, think of it as a universal consciousness, a sacred love consciousness. Again, use your words versus my words. But if I'm thinking about, for me, and how I want to move into Christ consciousness, it's the awareness of the voice in my head versus the knowing that I have. And the voice in my head is my ego. And the more that I listen to the voice in my head, the farther I move away from Christ consciousness, because I'm following the voice in my head. The voice, the thoughts, is what creates the illusion that there's problems, right? It was the voice, my ego, that was saying, no, you had a timeline. You want to launch this in February. It's June, right? It's late. Well, who says it's late? What is late? I certainly talked to people about, we plan on having this ready for February. Then it was, we plan on having it ready by March. I finally stopped telling people when we were planning to have it, because I was guided, right? Just to you can't say that. You have no control over the launch. And that was really hard for me, because in a business, I reverse engineer so much, right? And sometimes it works out really well, and sometimes it doesn't work out the way that I want it to. And so the voice in my head told me that the reason why it wasn't launching properly was because I didn't have the skill set to make it launch properly. And as I started to listen to the voice, not listen and agree with the voice, but listen to the voice, to listen to the ego, I started to see how the voice, the consequences of listening to the voice. I was feeling bad. I was feeling bad about myself. And so there was a point in time I thought, I'm not a great project manager. I could be, but it's really not a natural skill set that I have. And so I learned an extremely valuable opportunity, which is, if I'm working with other people, so I was working with a designer and I was working with a programmer. And so somebody had to take the lead. And because I don't know anything about design and I don't know anything about programming, I took the lead in what I do know, which is timelines. And that wasn't where it needed to be. The project needed to be. So the lesson for me, the opportunity for, was, when I'm in this situation again, I have to look at who's going to lead the project, who's going to manage the project, because more than likely it's not going to be me. And so that would mean either asking one of the other individuals to lead the project, or finding someone to be a project manager. And so it was beautiful. because I wasn't following my egoic thoughts, but I was in awareness that there was this resistance. So the thoughts that we have, those egoic thoughts, create the illusion of self that has problems, fears, desires, struggles, emotions, and pain. And this creates our false self. This isn't really who we are. At our core, we have the opportunity to be love, Christ consciousness, universal mind, whatever word will work for you. But what I became aware of was I was really clinging to these thoughts of who I thought I was or wasn't. And the harder, right, the harder I clung, the slower the project went, until I just finally, literally in frustration, it wasn't from a place of love. Eventually became a place of love, but honestly, it was like, fuck it, whatever. Like, I'm just gonna stop fighting it. So the fuck it came out of frustration, right? And then I just let go. It's like, okay, I'm obviously not in charge of this timeline, and I just need to surrender and trust that it will unfold as it should, when it should. And there were moments where I was completely in surrender, and there was moments that I was completely in frustration. And the completely in frustration is because I had thoughts around the situation, thoughts around the project, thoughts around me, thoughts around judgment around even the people who were involved in the project. Like, what do you mean you're going on? Like, what do you mean you're going on another holiday? You just had a holiday. Right. And I was like, ooh, who am I to decide who gets to go on a holiday or not? But because I was so frustrated that the project wasn't done when we all agreed to it, Now, again, opportunity lesson learned. If there was a project manager, the project manager would have held everyone accountable or not. I mean, who knows? And so I can't go back into it and say it would unfold this way, but the opportunity of learning there for me was to have someone manage that particular project. So one of the things is that if we could just be Christ consciousness. And sorry, I'm looking at my notes because I wrote notes this morning. So if we could just be Christ consciousness, and just as we view through our experiences, but look at our life through our eyes and just experience it, not have the attachment, not have the judgment, all of those things. Because we have this opportunity to experience life right here, right now, without any mental commentary, without any judgment or dialogue or illusionary thoughts or elusive thoughts, right? Because without those thoughts, there's an experience of the isness of the truth or not. And it's so different, right? And so as we start to progress spiritually, at least in my experience and what I'm observing, is that there may be less egoic thoughts, and they're still there, right? And sometimes they're really apparent, and sometimes it's insidious. So, for example, the thought around the project, managing the project, the timeline of the project, that was really insidious. And truth, I'm not saying we throw out all timelines and accountability. That's not the purpose of the conversation. But I was really caught up in what I was caught up in the fact that not meeting the timelines had a meaning about me, had a meaning about the academy, had a meaning about the people that were involved. And so what can happen, though, is if we start to move into Christ consciousness, then the thoughts become less personal. Like, you become more of an observer, right? They can come and go in the background without affecting you, because you understand it's simply programming. And it might, that programming might be like unique for you, but it is simply program. And so as we evolve in our relationship with either Christ consciousness thoughts, we can move from believing ourselves to be a thinker of thoughts to knowing ourselves as the experience of thoughts and of everything else that arises in the moment of time. And just being really clear with everybody, thoughts, ego is not bad, thinking is not bad, critical thinking is not bad, it's not wrong. It's to be in awareness. Is my critical thinking, is my intellect, are my thoughts holding me back from experiencing the isness of the life, of my life? Is it holding me back from experiencing what I'm, I guess, quote unquote, meant to experience, because I'm so focused on controlling the critical thinker? I'm so focused on, this is the way that it has to go because I made a decision that it has to go this way, because I have I've valued my intelligence. I have placed a high value on my intelligence. My family places high value on intelligence, right? My family places less value on intuition. It's like a familial thing. My family places less value on being in the moment versus doing to get the project done. My family and I, so like my family, I'll just say like, right, we place so much praise on being able to problem solve and think this through. And again, it's not wrong or bad, but as I started to witness myself over the last couple of weeks of being in a space of uncomfortableness, but frustrated, with the project, frustrated with certain relationships I have, it's because I'm valuing the incorrect thing, not the wrong thing, but the incorrect thing. I'm valuing the ego. My ego is really, really loud right now. And ego doesn't mean have to be like that cockiness, like, look at me, I'm great. Although that can be part of it, but the ego can be, this needs to happen. You should be doing this. What about this? It is more of them, at least of my ego, is more of like this has got to be done at this time. If it's not done at this time, this is what that means. Versus my Christ consciousness, my sacred love is like, it'll happen as it happens and it will unfold. And the project will be ready when it's meant to be ready. Now, that doesn't mean I sit back and eat bonbons and Netflix and chill, because that's not taking inspired action. So it's not about that. And so part of what happens with the ego is the ego goes into extremes. Like, right? Like that's an extreme. It's like black or white. Well, what about gray? And so if we start to look at ourselves and think about what experiences are we having and who's driving the bus, right? Is the ego driving the bus? So when we come from a place of Christ consciousness, you're in love with, how do I say this? You're in love with life itself. You're in love with life itself. I found myself saying the other day, I'm so not happy in, and it was this area of my life. And I paused and I went, oh, wow, look, where did that come from? Because I wouldn't have thought that 10 minutes ago before that. And it was in frustration, right? I was trying to have a conversation with Rob, and I was frustrated and trying to communicate with him, because I'm trying to communicate something I'm feeling, like as in a Christ consciousness feeling, and I was having a really difficult time with words. And Rob is extremely intelligent and values intelligence and intellect, and was challenging me on my intuition. And I became extremely angry and extremely frustrated. And the part of that, though, is that was my ego, right? My ego became defensive, right? In Christ consciousness, I don't need to defend myself to anyone, even the man that I love, right? In Christ consciousness and sacred love, the conversation would have been, it's okay that you don't understand. And I'm sorry that the way that I'm trying to share it with you, I will find words to share with you, right? At this moment in time, I don't have the words. It's a thought, it's a feeling. I can't intellectually explain what's going on. I can't intelligently share with you because it's a sense that I have. It's my intuition. But because I felt challenged and I wasn't coming from a space of Christ consciousness, I became defensive and frustrated and angry, and was taking the words that he said personal and reflecting that back to him, right? And so then there's like friction in the house because of it, and then my ego is hurt. My child, my core wounds, my core fears come out of that. So that's all part of this egoic process. But what happens if we sit back and allow the person to express how they want to express or need to express, not take it personal, and just be in the moment with that person and not be defensive? And so what I did was I became defensive. I felt like I had to defend my position. That's ego, right? That's ego. Christ consciousness, like universal consciousness, there's no defense. There's no need to defend love, right? It is what it is. So, because when thoughts are experiences just as thoughts and nothing more. So even at that, being in a place and position where approaching it from, he has thoughts and they're just thoughts. And although he might be giving meaning to those words, I, in Christ consciousness, do not have to give meanings to those words. If I, Ranchelle, ego Ed, gives meaning to those words, well, now we have a fight. Now we have a knock 'em down argument, right? Between these two egos. And that's really what it is these two egos. And so really what happens is our thoughts, our ego spins an illusion, right? So when we've talked in the past about our life is just a series of stories and illusions, it's because the ego spins the illusion. It takes your conditioning from your past, it takes your core wounds, your core fears, your roles, your patterns, and spins a story. And so your story depends on all of those pieces, and my story depends on all of those. And so that's one of the things that makes us so unique, right? So different as well. And that's why, if someone says to you, I can't believe that, like, you're not upset by that, and you're like, why the hell would I be upset about that, right? I've had many conversations. I don't know what the big deal is. It's because I'm either in a space and place where I'm not living in that illusion, or my ego says, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, because my ego hasn't spun the illusion, because I don't have those same core wounds, those same core fears, those roles, or the patterns. But if we can approach our life with under this Christ consciousness, where everything is an illusion, everything is a story, and we can make up any story we want. We can create whatever story we want. So what story do you want to spin? What illusion do you want to live in? Do you want to live in the illusion of poverty or in the illusion of prosperity? It's both an illusion, right? It's both an illusion. Do you want to live in an illusion of love or live in the illusion of not love? Do you want to live in the illusion of impact and influence or not impact or influence? And so It's fascinating. At least for me, I'm just like in awe. I'm in awe. And if we just allow ourselves to be in awe and be like, and often I'll joke around, and when I'm watching the illusions unfold, right, I'm watching the stories unfold, I'm like, now look at this is such a great story, let me grab the popcorn and have some popcorn. And it can be both the illusion of the antagonist, the protagonist, or the illusion of the hero. But what illusion do you want to create? And it's not bad, it's not wrong, it's not correct or incorrect. It's just this cool awareness, right? As you move into Christ consciousness, you'll break the illusion down. You'll see all the illusions for what they are, which just is an illusion. And then it becomes fun. Like it really becomes fun. Because you're like, this is just like, who could have actually, right? It's like, you can't make this shit up. I think, right? Tracy says it all the time, you can't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up. And so we can be in this space of Christ consciousness. So I'll end with this today. One of the people that I've been reading, I can't remember who the author is, talks about our thoughts are like clouds, like thoughts in the thought stream. That's how they describe it. Like, so Christ consciousness is just blue sky. Thoughts come in like thought streams, like clouds. And so there might be like a fluffy cloud, there might be a dark cloud, there might be a tornado, there might be a storm cloud, gray overcast clouds, whatever that looks like. But what we do know, and I'm talking about not an intellectual knowing, but moving it into like the knowing, is that those thoughts, those clouds, can change the perception of our reality. Right? So no problem, Anne. We'll end as well. Thank you so much. So what reality do you want to create? What thought clouds do you want in your illusion? And just make that decision, right? And then observe when there's a tornado, observe when there's a hail cloud, right? Observe when there's a rain cloud. And that would be, I think that'd be lots of fun. Go, what kind of cloud is that, right? That looks like a shitstorm to me. So that's right. That is shit being flung from one end of the world to the other, or at least feels like it. Right? Ah, awesome. Thank you so much. I will stop the recording.